You're a developer or DBA, and you've been given InfoSphere Optim Query Workload Tuner for developing SQL applications or tuning SQL in existing applications. And you open up the Data Studio full client, and this is what you see. This is the default screen when you open up the client for the very first time. This is the database administration perspective. As you probably know, in Eclipse-based software, there are different perspectives that you work in. Each perspective is a collection of views and editors that you use for particular tasks. And you might be looking at the default perspective and saying to yourself, all right, where do I start tuning, or how can I start developing and tuning SQL statements? So you can do some tuning from here, and you can also start developing SQL statements from here, but all of the features for query tuning are available in the IBM query tuning perspective, and that's where we're going to go right now. If you go up to the top right corner and click this icon, and then click Other, and select IBM Query Tuning. I'm going to double click it. You see that you now are in a different perspective. You've got the Project Explorer up here, you've got the Data Source Explorer down here, and you've got Database Groups, which is a view that is not going to be used in this video, so I'm going to minimize it. Now, the first step in tuning, after you've developed an SQL statement, say an SQL editor or routine editor, the first step in tuning is to tell the user interface for InfoSphere Optim Query Workload Tuner which SQL statement it is you want to tune. And for the rest of this video, I'm going to call the product IOQWT for short. To tell the user interface, or the workflow assistant it's called, which SQL you want to tune, you have to capture it. And there are several ways that you can do that. There are a number of ways that you can do that within the user interface, the workflow assistant, and there are some ways that you can do that outside of the workflow assistant. So I'm going to show you some ways, first of all, inside of the workflow assistant. What I'm going to do is expand my database connection here, and I'm going to right-click it and select Analyze and Tune, Start Tuning. Now, my database is already configured for tuning. So it has a set of explain tables that I have permissions on, and it's got other tables and other objects that IOQWT requires for tuning. Now, when I selected Start Tuning, the Workflow Assistant opened up to the Capture section, and it opened up specifically to the Input Text page. Now, if I have an SQL statement in my system clipboard, and I think I do, let me see. Yes, I can just paste it in here and then select Invoke Advisors and Tools and go to another section of the Workflow Assistant where I can choose which advisors I want to run. I can create an access plan graph. I can format the statement and do other things. But right now, in this video, I'm going to show you ways of capturing. We won't go into actually running those tools and advisors. Now, another way that you can capture SQL statements is to click File here to go to the Capture SQL from File page, and you can, if you have SQL statements in a file, you can browse to that file and then click the Capture button, and the Workflow Assistant will parse it and list out those statements for you here. And you can either run the workload, the advisors and tools on the selected statement, or you can save all of those statements to a workload. Another way of capturing is through the SQL or routine editor, which I mentioned before, and I'm going to lessen the size of the workflow assistant right now and show you how you can capture from the routine editor. So I'm going to expand the database here and go down to schemas and go down to a schema that has a store procedure with an SQL statement in it right here. And I will open this up in the routine editor. So open with routine editor. And if I right click anywhere in the routine editor where I've got an SQL statement, you can see down here is the Start Tuning option. If I click that, I am back in the Workflow Assistant, and rather than ending up in the capture section, I'm immediately taken to the invoke section, which is the location from which I can run advisors and tools. So I'm going to go back now and open up an SQL editor. And to do that, we'll go up here and say new SQL script. And I'm going to paste that SQL statement that I used before into an SQL editor. And I can right click anywhere in here and say start tuning. And just as before, it'll take me to the invoke section immediately with the statement showing down here. And then from this location again, I can choose which advisors and tools I want to run. If I go back to the capture section, I can also capture from an SQL category, but that's a location that's deprecated starting in the 3.1.1 release. An SQL category is a category in the SQL category view, which is part of the query tuning perspective that is again being deprecated, so I'm not really going to talk about those. You can capture from an XML file. The XML file is in the format, the query workload tuner format. So it means that you have a tool that has created an XML file in this format, and there are SQL statements in it. So I'm not going to go into how to export SQL statements in this format. I'm going to instead move on to the next location, and that's InfoSphere Optim Performance Manager. You can capture from a repository database for IOPM, and I'm not going to do that right now because it requires a bit of setup, and I'm not quite set up to do that, but I can do that in a later video if you like. And there are other locations down here too, depending on which DB2 you are connected to. I am connected to DB2 Linux, Unix, and Windows, so I can capture from these locations. I can capture from the package cache, and I can capture from packages and an SQL procedure, and I can also capture from a view, a trigger, or an SQL UDF. And to capture from a view, I would again go outside of the Workflow Assistant, and I could go down here to the Data Source Explorer and find a view, right click it, and select Analyze and Tune, Start Tuning, and again I'm taken to, well, this time I'm taken to the capture section because I might have captured more than one statement from some of these sources. So that is how to capture from that location. And for other locations such as package cache or package, you have to create a filter because you might have a lot of SQL statements in your package cache or in the packages that you are trying to capture SQL from. So you want to narrow down the number of SQL statements that the Workflow Assistant has to look through and return to you in the user interface. So if you go and set up a filter, you can filter on a number of different criteria like total CPU time, statement execution time, package name or schema, a number of things. You can even choose then columns that you want to sort on. Say you have chosen statement execution time on the previous page because you want to be able to see which statements took the longest to run. So you can choose that as a sort column, and then you can choose which columns you want to display, and then select Finish. And I don't know if I have anything in my package cache at the moment, but you can either capture immediately or you can schedule when you're capturing from the package cache. When you're capturing from packages, you don't have the option of scheduling, but again, you create a filter, and there are different criteria from when you're capturing from the package cache. So if you are trying to capture from DB2 for ZOS sources, it's pretty much the same thing. For most of these sources, you have to define a filter, except for SQL procedure, and I believe also view, trigger, or SQL UDF. If you like, in another video, I can connect to DB2 for ZOS subsystem and show you how to capture from these locations. That's it. Thank you.